12. That's all she was when she left the island and moved to the mainland. She's the 8th of 10 siblings, all born and raised in the small island of Macuro, that's in front of Trinidad and Tobago, where her dad is from. ¿Por qué te fuiste de Macuro con 12 años?
¿Por qué me fui? De alguna manera no me fui. Mi mamá me sacó. Me sacó porque en este pueblo no había estudios sino hasta 6º grado.
¿Cómo te sentiste cuando te fuiste?
Me sentí, de alguna manera me alegraba. Me alegraba porque veía que estaba teniendo una oportunidad que muchos no tenían. Era una oportunidad de ir a estudiar y yo quería estudiar, siempre quise estudiar.
She spent most of her teenage years working odd jobs and moving around a lot. Every now and then reconnecting with her other siblings who had left the island before she did in other towns. Eventually, she decides to stay in one town where she reconnects with one of her older sisters, Dalvis. She becomes the closest thing to a mother figure to her for years to come. She is her best friend, her sister, and mother, and in many ways, her rock. She later on marries my father, and they both settle down by the coast in Puerto La Cruz. She had been married before, but she doesn't like to talk about that. Here, she decides she wanted to finish her education, and while being pregnant with her first child, my brother, she starts high school. By the time my brother is 5 or 6, she graduates, and not too long after that, she's pregnant again, and this time with me. Around this time, she gets a little spot in our local market where she will sell clothes to put herself through university. Inspired by her sister, she studies law. I still remember being in middle school and seeing my mom's endless study nights. The dining table filled with books and highlighters. I remember thinking, how does she do it? How can she come home from working to then go to classes at night and then eventually come back home to do even more studying, while on top of that, being a mother of 2. And if I'm completely honest, I was a terrible child. Honestly, picking my mom from university was my favorite thing about this period of her life. It allowed me to see something other than her being tired and surrounded by piles of books. Seeing her joking around with her classmates in this place that looks so mature and interesting for me. At the end, I got to see my mom's graduation, and so did her mom. But there was somebody that couldn't be there that day, and that was her sister. Yes, that sister. My Aunt Davis passed away when my mom had still a few semesters left, and her loss was before and after in our lives. She was my mother's rock after all, and I even saw her as a second mother. My mom's grief at one point was so deep, she isolated herself for a while to a point that it felt as though I had lost them both. Dalvis was the one who taught my brother English. She was one of the happiest women I have known, warm like no other, witty, and so wise that for so many people, she was also a mother figure. She had no children. She wanted to see the world, and years after her passing, I even ended up finding out that she spoke Japanese. She knew the world was big, and out of spite of my father's small-mindedness and refusal to use his European passport to travel to the country of his parents' origins, she went on a solo trip to Spain to show us that there was more than Venezuela in this life. She wanted my mother to remember that there's always more. Little did she know my mother would end up taking her advice quite literally almost 15 years later.
¿Por qué te fuiste de Venezuela? Me motivó la situación que se vivía en Venezuela, era demasiado caótica para conseguir los alimentos, las filas o colas que se hacían para comprar algo, la violencia, la delincuencia. Y pensaba que ustedes merecían una oportunidad, que pudieran tener una mejor calidad de vida que la que se estaba viviendo en Venezuela, aún a la que yo tuve de niña.
A lot happened after Dalby's death. My mom's rock became Jesus. Her faith got her through her grieving and through life after the loss of the other two siblings she lost not too long after she lost the first one. She buried her mom too. The sound of my mom sobbing in the car after the wake was over is something I'll never forget. However, she learned to move forward, something I still struggle with. Although my relationship with God is a complicated one, and for many years I didn't like discussing that, I have to admit I have seen the way my mom's faith have been the only thing to sustain her at times. The only thing that got us as a family out of Venezuela. Leaving Venezuela was our collective desire. Aside from our dad for a while, we all wanted to leave. He was our connection to Spain, and my mom was the one that managed to get all the paperwork done. This was exceptionally remarkable, as that was not an easy task while living under the decaying and corrupt Venezuelan government. They made it so that both living and leaving will be almost impossible for most citizens. If it wasn't for her courage and her diligence, we wouldn't have made it here, and for that I'm forever grateful. Even when we left, life has not been a walk in the park, although that's something I'm now able to do without an immense fear for my safety. Starting over has been one of the hardest things we have done. I know how much harder it has been on my parents, especially on my mom. But she had faced this uncertainty before, leaving her home at only 12 years old to fend for herself. What changed is that she's in her 50s now, and the journey was 12 hours long into another continent. She's wiser now, more confident in her abilities and in who she is. And this time, she says, God was by her side. And I have seen it. She has endured so much change and pain, and she still wakes up grateful for the life she has. She's grateful that she got to live long enough to start all over. She's not a lawyer anymore. She works taking care of the elderly, something she somehow enjoys, and reminded her of her desire to go to nursing school. There is so much I'm not even telling you that she's been through, and still she manages to hope for the future and dream. She's got the bravest heart, and I don't tell her that enough. But if there is somebody whose courage I look up to, it's hers. This is her hair. This is her laugh.
Ay, nunca se enterará de eso.
These are her hands. And this is the woman who won my admiration since I was a child. The woman with her nose buried in a pile of books and her heart in the hands of God. My mother.